What's up again, everybody? I've got a new haircut. I've got a sweet new shirt that I'm actually going to talk about here in a moment, and I've got a brand new deck for you. This is a classic constructed deck with a brand new Uprising hero in mind, and that is DROMAI Ash Artist. This classic constructed deck is all about flooding the board with dragons and protecting yourself at all costs so that you can win late game by just throwing advantageous amounts of dragons at your opponent and knocking them all down. So basically, we're going to protect our own life totals, we're going to build a board of dragons, and we are going to just throw them at our opponent until they die in the late game. That's what we're aiming for, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. How it works, what she likes to do, DROMAI, how the deck is built, what the matchups look like, sideboard. We're going to go all the way into how to play DROMAI Ash Artist with this deck. But before we get too far, I have some exciting news because this video is sponsored by Into the AM. Into the AM is a men's apparel company that lives and breathes creativity and self-expression. They produce high-quality apparel such as graphic and basic tees, hoodies, and pants, and they have meticulously designed their collection of elevated everyday apparel for comfort, style, and durability. And these qualities are most easily seen in their graphic tees. These things are equal parts insanely comfortable and incredibly high quality, with colors that literally jump off the shirt. I mean, I'm wearing one right now. You can't see. There, you could see it a little bit. There it is. Look at that. It's crazy. If you like your clothing to make a statement, then these are for you. But believe it or not, my favorite thing they make is actually their basic tee. These are one of the best shirts I've ever owned, and it isn't particularly close. The shirt is comfortable, the fabric is thick enough to feel high quality, but breathable enough to be cool in, and the cut reaches to the perfect length for me. You can't go wrong by picking this one up, and I plan to grab one in each color for everyday wear. Thank you so much, Into the AM, for sponsoring this video. This is a company that I already supported and purchased products for, even before they reached out to me. And it is a dream come true to have them supporting this content and allowing us to make this video together. If you'd like to give them a try, feel free to use the link in the description below and you will get 10% off site-wide. All right, so here we go. First things first, we do need to know what DROMAI actually does. She is a 4 intellect, 40 health Draconic Illusionist hero from this new Uprising set. She says whenever you pitch a red card, that's a red card with a card with a red color strip. So for example, Sweeping Blow on the top there has a red color strip. Whenever you pitch one of those cards, you create an Ash token. What's an Ash token? This is an Ash token. An Ash token is a token with the title Ash, and it says material. While Ash is under an object, that object gains Phantasm. Why do you care about this? Well, you're going to create these Ash tokens, and then you're going to use these Ash tokens to create these dragons. Notice, in order to play any of these Invoke cards, you have to transform target Ash you control into whatever you're playing. So you have to have this Ash in order to make it a dragon. Now, do keep in mind that whatever you make into, from this Ash will gain Phantasm. And Phantasm is a keyword wherein if you're attacking like with the dragon and your opponent blocks with a 6 power or more card, then you will destroy said thing. So keep that in mind. But you basically are going to be creating these Ash tokens by pitching red cards, thanks to DROMAI's effect. Once you've played a red card on the turn, she says that dragons you control have go again while attacking. And the weapon that we play in this deck is Storm of Sandakai, because it's the only weapon really available to her, basically, that allows her to attack with dragons, because it says dragon allies you control have once per turn action, pay 0 to attack. And so, in other words, we need this combo right here, this hero, this weapon, and these dragons to kill our opponent, and we're going to do so by creating Ash and protecting our life total by blocking with our cards and using certain key moments to make a bunch of Ash and cut certain key combos to make a bunch of Ash. And then we're going to make dragons, and then we're going to throw the dragons at our opponent's face. Let's talk about equipment next, and then we'll go into the main board of the deck and kind of what she wants to do with the cards that we have available to us. So first things first, here are the equipment that we're using. Notice it's only 5 pieces of equipment in this deck period. I kind of want to carve out one one extra slot to include Phantasmal Footsteps. I'll talk about that last. But first things first, Arcanite Skullcap, we use it for the block. It's perfect for blocking, and so we're going to use it for blocking. And we can also use Arcane Barrier 3 in certain like niche scenarios, but it's really good for blocking. Flamescale Furnace is also really good for blocking, but we play Flamescale Furnace because of the effect. Once per turn instant, pay a resource. Gain a resource for each red card in pitch. Activate only if you've played a red card. Now this is fantastic because we can use this effect not really to gain the resources. We don't need it for the resources necessarily. We use it to create ash. So we play a red card, and then we can pitch a red card from our hand, and in doing so, pitching a red card to activate this effect, we create an ash. We also gain a resource, which is kind of cool, but essentially we can use this like turn after turn if we have the cards in hand and we've played a red card. We can use this to gain ash as well over time. Plus, it blocks very, very well. Silken Form is one of 2 ARM equipments that we have here in the equipment package. This one is fantastic if you're playing a go-wide strategy, like your opponent is playing a go-wide strategy and you want to defend against it. Well, you just quell across the board as many times as you can based on what your hand can allow. And not only that, quelling with red cards will trigger DROMAI to actually make more ash, which is pretty fantastic. Outside of that, we can just use the effect in tempo matchups to just create an Ashwing and then come in with the Ashwing, which is pretty nice as well. So this is one of the 2 ARM equipments that we use. The other one is Ghostly Touch, and we use this into any matchup that has a lot of Phantasm poppers. So again, all of our dragons are going to have Phantasm. When you create an Aether Ashwing, it's going to have Phantasm because it's on top of an Ash. And if it has Phantasm, then blocking with a 6 power or greater attack will destroy it immediately. And in doing so, if we have Ghostly Touch, it will put a Haunt counter on Ghostly Touch. So late game, in matchups wherein our opponents have a lot of poppers, like Guardian or Brute or anything like that, late game, this can have upwards of like 12 to 15 counters on it, at which point you can, late game, remove a Haunt counter and attack with this. Now, it will have Phantasm, so we do need some combo pieces to protect it, but this is a way to win the game in certain specific matchups. Plus, it also looks really, really cool. So that is the Ghostly Touch. And then finally, we have Silent Stilettos. I'm playing these, one, for Arcane Barrier 1 into, like, Rune Blades is perfectly fine. You kind of want Arcane Barrier 1 into Rune Blades, but also because we can, at a very key moment, use its effect to gain the action point back and keep pushing damage. So in a specific matchup, we can do that. Now, is it good to have Phantasmal Footsteps? Actually, yes. Now, Phantasmal Footsteps doesn't actually allow you to gain action points back like it does in Prism, but it is still a block 1 into most aggro decks. You can just block across the board. So it almost acts like a shield in Guardian. So I kind of want to make room, 1 extra slot of room to just include that as well. So just pretend that one card that I'm about to mention doesn't exist and you're there. Poof, done. There is one card I do have in mind that I want to kind of test out to see if it's even necessary, but we'll talk about that in the sideboard section. All right, so with that understood and the deck kind of concept being established that we're trying to protect our life total, block with cards from hand, create a board state over time, and then overwhelm our opponent with said board state, let's talk through the main board. Okay, I've split the main board into packages so that it's more easy to talk about and look at on screen. But if you want to see the full deck list in all of its glory in one fell swoop, check the comments or the description. I have put the deck list down in there. And if you're a patron, this is something I'm going to be doing going forward specifically for you. If you would like to subscribe to the Patreon and get these deck lists and a full guide written out on the deck list itself on FabDB, feel free to become a patron above me, and you'll get all of this stuff for future deck lists as well. So this is the Dragon package. Here it is. I run 17 main board dragons with 3 in the sideboard. I bet you can't guess which 3 are in the sideboard. DROMAI here. Let's start with DROMAI. This one's like the best dragon ever. Invoke DROMAI is a 0-cost invocation, which is a brand new type of card in this game. It blocks for 3. It is a red card. All of these dragons are red cards, so if you play them, it gives all your dragons go again. This one costs 0, and when you invoke it, you flip it over, and wouldn't you know it, fantastically enough, it says once per turn when DROMAI attacks or leaves the arena, gain 1 action point. It's a 3/2, which is fantastic. When you just play this out there and attack with it, you gain the action point. This is one of the best dragons in the game because it dances around Phantasm Poppers. So no matter what your matchup is, this is a really good dragon to have in hand because you can just dance around Phantasm Popping. Asvalai costs 0 as well, and again, turns on all go-agains. This one just pushes damage. It's a 2/3 as well. This one says, or sorry, a 2/3. The other one was a 3/2. This one says, whenever Asvalai attacks, you can have him deal 1 arcane damage to up to 2 targets. So instead of just pushing 2, he can actually also push arcane against your opponent, or he can push arcane onto, like another ally that you're playing against. Really good in the mirror if you're playing against like a bunch of Ashwings. He can clear out stuff. But again, he's a 0 cost, and that is a very good payoff because if we are planning, if our game plan is to, maybe arsenal something like this, create Ash, and then block with our entire hand, then we can play this from Arsenal and still attack with all of our dragons. Kyloria cost 1. It's another red invocation, and when you transform Invoke Kyloria into Kyloria, then you have a 4/2 dragon, 4 being a very fantastic breakpoint in the game that says whenever Kyloria hits a hero, gain control of an item they control, and if you don't gain control of an item, you just draw a card. So in most matchups, your opponent isn't playing an item. In the matchups that they are playing an item, you're most likely getting like an energy potion, or if you're playing into Mechanologist, then you're getting like an item that they really want to keep, which is fantastic for you. Kyloria is a must kill. Or if you're playing into like Warrior, then you're taking their copper tokens, which is kind of weird. You don't want that. But in every other matchup, this literally just draws you a card if this hits. It's like Snatch, except this has go again, most likely because you played a red card by making it, or you can play a red card on that turn. This card is insane, super good. This combined with our next dragon, super busted that your opponent just has to deal with these cards. And alongside of Miragai, it is incredible. Miragai is a 1-cost invocation as well that says your first dragon attack each turn loses and can't gain Phantasm. And this one needs a 4 power attack to go in and actually kill this if they're attacking and destroying it on their turn, which is really good because this heals itself at the end of their turn if they don't fully kill it. So they have to commit some stuff to actually killing Miragai. And this one you do want to kill if you're the opponent because it just means that all of these dragons gain value without really Phantasm being able to stop them. And then finally we have Yendurai before the other 2 big hitter dragons. Cost 1, really good 1-cost dragon because this one comes in with an endurance counter. And an endurance counter basically stops 3 damage, which is really good. So unless they send 6 damage across, they're not going to kill this. And so this is a very sticky dragon into a meta full of things pushing 4 damage. Finally, we have 2 big hitter dragons. You've got Invoke Dominia, which I was too harsh on. I played Invoke Dominia a lot in Limited because I lucked into getting it several times. And in Limited, it's a little harder to set up, but in Constructed, it's actually fantastic because most of our cards are red. So you almost always hit this effect. You pay 4 for this, you transform Dominia, and you attack for 4, which is fantastic. And then you basically just take a card from their hand every single turn. Card's real good in Classic Constructed, and I should definitely not hate on it because I am playing it in this deck, and it does work in that deck. Basically, just take their cards. I mean, it's like, I think I glossed over it just now. I gotta just push this more. You take their cards. Looking at their hand is fine. You don't really care about looking at their hand. What you care about is taking their best card out of their hand and not giving them another one. And they never get it back. That's really good. It's really good, especially in Classic Constructed. You play against Briar, Channel Mount Heroics in their hand, you just dominate them. You just say no. Speaking of things that can dominate opponents, Invoke Tomeltai is a 5-cost dragon. It's a very expensive, but you win the game if you get the effect to go off more often than not because you destroy their best equipment and you take away the value that they may not have gotten out of it. So this one's really good. Plus, it's also a 5/5, and you're basically just telling your opponent to deal with this in some way, because otherwise I'm just going to take away your equipment. All of your equipment go away to this card. Super good card. This is the Dragon package. This is what we're trying to set up onto the board so that we can push these on hit effects, or we can just push raw damage alongside of our myriad of Aether Ashwings that we're going to create. So from this point, we should look at the attack action cards that accompany these dragons and help us to set up our whole engine of creating Ash and turning that into these dragons and other Aether Ashwings. All right, on to the attacks we go, and you notice there's not many attacks, so let's break them down. Funnily enough, there aren't very many attacks, and most of these cards are red, as you see. Sweeping Blow. I do want to say this. All of these attacks serve more than one function, and that's the important part about them, and it's why we included them. Sweeping Blow is one of those examples. It costs 1, so you can pitch a red into this, and in doing so, create an Ash. But when you play it, it attacks for 3, which is fine. It has Go Again. That's very important, because we want to be able to follow up with dragons, and it creates an Ash. Okay, so by doing this, you are most likely creating an Ash from its effect and also from paying for its cost. So you're creating 2 Ash off of this card, which is why we include the blues as well. We include 3 reds and 3 blues. The blues, we don't care about attacking with them. I mean, we're going to if we want to. We can push 1 damage. Your opponent's going to be like, that's fine, I take 1. But you're creating 2 Ash, most likely, by pitching a red card for this. We also play the blues here because they can pay for like this cost and a dragon and like something else. So it covers a lot of bases playing a card like Sweeping Blow blue versus just playing the reds. The reds are fine. Blue is really good. Weirdly enough, the blue is like just as good, if not better, than the red in this scenario because you can use it for a multiple variety of things. Same thing with Billowing Mirage. Billowing Mirage costs 1, so you can pitch into this. It is a red card, so playing red cards again allow you to have Go Again dragons. This one attacks for 3. You don't really care about the attack, but you do care about the effect. When you attack with it, transform up to 1 Ash you control into an Aether Ashwing. Up to means you can choose 0 if you want. But up to 1 means that you can also choose 1, and you can transform an Ash into an Ashwing and follow up this attack with an Ashwing attack as well. So this is a really solid card that does multiple things for you. Playing it gives Go Again. And then finally we have Dust Up. Now Dust Up is an interesting one because at first I actually didn't like Dust Up, but on a hand where you're just early game attacking like with one of these 2 cards and then playing Dust Up, it's like super good because it pushes a breakpoint of 4, which is fantastic, and if it hits, you create an Ash token, so it gives you an Ash token, and you transform it into a dragon. So you get all of the effects that you've gotten on these previous ones on 1 card that pushes a breakpoint. Now, it doesn't have Go Again, so you can't follow this up with anything, and we're not playing anything that will give this Go Again, but it is still an incredible little card that we are including in the attack actions package. And not many attack actions because we're not really looking to push physical attacks with cards. We are looking to build the dragons, but this helps us build dragons. Okay, we're on to non-attack action cards, and these have a lot of effect and a lot of utility in the deck as well. A couple of these you're going to notice in the sideboard as well as we flip through the sideboard, but let's start with Uprising. Uprising is an interesting card in that if you have like 3-4 dragons, all of your dragons, when they attack, they're draconic attacks. And so when you attack with them, they will get +1 from the effect of Uprising. It's also a 0-cost red that if you choose to Arsenal and then block with your entire hand on your opponent's turn, you can come in with Uprising to start your turn off. It'll turn on all the 0-cost Go Again attacks from your dragons and give them a buff, all on a 0-card hand, which is really good because this coming from Arsenal, super fantastic. Now, is it good enough? That's what I'm going to be testing over the next couple of weeks to see if it just does what it needs to do, but we run all 3 copies of that. Up until this point, everything that we've shown runs all 3 copies if possible. From this point forward, that may change a little bit. As you see, we run in the main board exactly 1 energy potion, but yeah, everything before this has been a 3 of if possible, except the 2 legendary dragons. Can't run 3 of those. Rake the Embers is insane. This card is so good that I have 9 copies in the deck overall. There are 3 blues in the sideboard, and they may just be main board. I may swap out 1 card we'll talk about later for those cards to come into the main board because it's just so good. Rake the Embers does everything you ever want. It creates Ash. It transforms Ash into Ashwings. It's red in this case. It costs 1, so you can pitch into it as well. The only thing it doesn't do is block 3. It blocks 2. So that is one downside to this, but literally this card's perfect. So we run 3 reds. Heck, we even run the yellows, and we might run the blues in the main board as well. You still play this card, right? You still play it out there. That's why we run the yellows, because you don't run yellows in this deck at all except for this card, but creating 2 Ash Wings after making an Ash, super good. And you can pitch a red to create an Ash alongside of this and then actually use the effect. So we run 6 of those in the main board, might run 9, who knows, as we tinker with this. Now, Passing Mirage. Card is legit. First of all, it's really annoying for your opponent to deal with in this deck, because if you're building a bunch of dragons, they can be dealt with without, you know, the drawback of Spectra, okay? Spectra on this card makes it uncomfortable, because your opponent wants to deal with your dragons and then, like, attack you to the face. Or they don't want to deal with your dragons at all and attack you to the face. Passing Mirage, when it comes down, it literally tells your opponent, if you don't spend a turn dealing with Passing Mirage, I'm going to get pure value for the rest of the game. And we run 3 copies of this, so they're going to have to deal with it 3 times. And one of these we are going to want to save for the late game in specific matchups so that we can Ghostly Touch, because Passing Mirage affects Ghostly Touch when it is attacking, because until the end of the turn it becomes an Illusionist ally with Phantasm. So when you attack with this, it is an Illusionist attack, and your first Illusionist attack each turn can't gain Phantasm. So in other words, Ghostly Touch here loses the Phantasm, doesn't have Phantasm, and can attack for those big damage turns in specific matchups. So this card is a powerhouse. We run exactly 3 of them. We would run more if we could. You could also consider running more of this Energy Potion as well, because Energy Potion is just good for paying things in the late game. It's good because you can come in with this at the end of a turn after attacking with dragons. Let's say you play a red card from your hand, and then you have this Energy Potion left in your hand. You can go attack with all your dragons, play an Energy Potion, and then in the late game scenarios where you want to play like that Invoke Tomeltai, which cost 5, you've got 2 of the resources ready at your disposal. Plus, if you, you know, like for example, had a 1-card hand that was a dragon that you can't pay for, and you have an Energy Potion on the board, you can crack the Energy Potion and pay for like a 1-cost dragon to come out and play, which is really good. So we run 1 of these. We may run more. You have more in the sideboard if you need to include more blues into the deck for specific matchups, but that is the non-attack package for the main board. And then finally we have what I'm calling the defense package. This is how we survive all of those turns. From a lot of the aggressive decks that are really trying to push a bunch of damage, this is how we go about doing it. It's defense reactions, it's life gain, it's instants that protect you. So these are all the defense cards that we have. So we have Sink Below, because Sink Below has been good since the dawn of time. It's good right now when there's a bunch of you know, like 4 attacks flying around out there. So we run Sink Below, and we can use the Sink effect, of course, to bottom a card and then, you know, bring something back. We have Fate for Scenes as well. Opting is pretty good. These are fantastic. Being able to kind of see what's on top of the deck and then dig for like a second cycle seems pretty good. We have Sigil of Solace. Sigil of Solace we're running 3 of. This basically says we just start at 49 health, which is pretty solid. Starting at 49 health, drawing these sigils over the course of, you know, like the game makes for a nice time. Plus, don't forget, you can arsenal a Sigil of Solace. On your turn, after you block with your entire hand, you can play a Sigil of Solace red from Arsenal at instant speed and give all of your dragons go again because you played a red card. So very important to note, this card does double duty in the deck. Now, probably the best card to come out of Uprising is Oasis Respite. This card is insane. It's an instant, so it dances around certain specific, you know, like dominate things like that. It costs 1, so you can pitch a red card and create an Ash on the back side of this. It prevents 4 damage that would be dealt to target hero by a source of your choice. So if you pick the source as Rosetta Thorn, which comes across, it's a single source, dealing 2 damage in one instant and 2 damage in another instance. This covers all 4 of that damage. That is how that functionality works. That is confirmed by a judge. You pick the source, this blocks 4 of that. This is also great in Kano, like into Kano, I should say, because it stops 4 of the damage that comes across with Wildfire. So this card is really good to stop Wildfire as well. And then also you gain a life if you have less life, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is that it's really good to stop 4 damage from a source. And then finally we have Sand Cover. I don't know if I'm going to run all 3 copies of Sand Cover, or if I'm going to, you know, swap out 2 copies and play 1 copy and then swap in like 2 others from the sideboard. I'm tinkering around with this card, but it's kind of like Oasis Respite. Okay, it costs nothing except an ash, and if we generate enough ash, this is fine. If we don't generate enough ash, but we should, if you don't though, on specific games and specific turns, then this is kind of expensive. That being said, this does have the ability to basically stop 4 damage because it targets an ash, and then it says ward 4. That ash gains ward 4, which means if your hero would be dealt damage, prevent 4 of that damage and destroy the ash. So in other words, this is basically like a Sink Below, a Fate Foreseen, or an Oasis Respite, except it just functions in a little bit of a different way, and it allows us to protect our life total. So those are the defense cards in our deck. They defend, they protect our life, they give us more life, they allow us to keep the game going to the late game, where hopefully we've established enough of a board that we just overrun our opponent. Alright, so there you go. That is the main board of the deck, and as I said, the main board is very extensive. It's 57 cards. It's mostly reds, as you can see looking at the cards. Literally almost all reds. We have 3, 6, 7 blues in this main board, plus 3 yellows. We may include 3 extra blues if we decide to swap out some number of these like protection cards or some number of these other cards for 3 of the Rake the Embers. We may decide to do that as we go, and plus you may swap in certain specific matchups where you want more blues to pay for more things. But that being said, it is mostly red, which means you're mostly pitching red to create ash to pay for effects, and you're mostly playing red cards to give dragons go again. So from this point, let's go ahead and look at the sideboard and talk through when you're going to sub in these sideboard cards and why you'd want to go and do those. All right, let's talk through the sideboard. This is the sideboard that I have. It's 17 cards. Most of it is dedicated to Phantasm popping, which is kind of funny. Maybe I'm giving too much respect to the Phantasm poppers, but I do have these dragons. Invoke Themai. I have exactly 3 Themais. This is my spoiler card, and I think it's a fantastic dragon if your opponent's like Wizard. If your opponent is any wizard whatsoever, you play 3 of these, and then you chuckle at them when you draw it and play at turn 0. Because this card is ridiculous to deal with. It's a 3/4 that just stops all activated abilities and cards being played on your turn. It is insane. It's really powerful. It does a ton of damage to your opponent's game plan. You can also play this into like Guardians that want a defense react, or anybody that wants to activate multiple abilities, like Crown of Seeds being activated on this is it just turns it off, right? You can't actually Crown of Seeds like for future turns if you don't actually just straight up deal with Themai. And it's a 3/4 body, and so it's a little hard to deal with. You could argue that this is a main board card and have like 20 dragons. Then the question just becomes, how many cards do you actually want to run in a specific scenario? Do you want to run like 66 cards in your deck? Because if you do, you just throw those in. All right, the Phantasm Popper package. We have Command and Conquers. This card's just good as well, but we use it for popping phantasms against Prism, which is pretty solid. I'm a fan of that. Erase Face, same thing. This has the double duty effect of being able to turn off certain hero effects, which might be good. It might be solid to just do that, but I am running just 2 of these, and with a 3rd card slot, I am running Thaw, because this can do double duty of being a 6 popper and also being fantastic for destroying a Frost Hex, which is probably like your only way to lose the Icelander matchup. You have like they find all their Frost Hexes really fast and they freeze you out. So this one of Thaw I think is probably enough to deal with like that possible eventuality. If they hit that, you find a Thaw and then you can destroy their Frost Hex. And then we have 3 Fyendal's Fighting Spirit. I'm running the red. The yellow, it does 6, so you may consider running the yellow, but I think you're just running this literally to pop phantasms against like other Dromais, and if you do that, you gain life. You run it against other prisms, and if you pop things, you could possibly gain life. So this card seems like really good in this style of deck that wants to like just block and control and then make dragons and then go. You gain some life from this effect, so we run 3 of these into specific matchups. You could maybe argue that running more copies of this could be advantageous because it does gain you life when you block, but sometimes because this blocks 2, if it's not a specifically like popper that you're trying to pop, this is not really gaining. It's like net like 0 for life, because most things block 3, right? We do have 3 Rake the Embers. Again, I really like this card, man. I think you may just play this main board. I'm just going to mess with it. Right now, it's in the sideboard. You bring in blues, including these other 2 energy potions. You bring these in for matchups where you want to pitch to Arcane Barrier and stop things, right? Because you can make Ash Wings. Ash Wings, by the way, if you didn't know, have Arcane Barrier 1 on them. And so if you make a bunch of Ash Wings, this can be really beneficial to have these blues in the deck to just pitch into Ash Wing Arcane Barriers against like Kano and stuff like that. But you run the blue Rake the Embers because you could also just bring these in and just make a lot of dragons. And again, energy potions, fantastic to drop at the end of a turn, but also good for pitching into Arcane Barrier. You can also pitch these, I should be very specific, you can also pitch these into Quell, which is pretty cool as well. So Quell is a cool effect in this deck. If you're running that specific equipment, you could argue that you would want more blues for that. So when are you bringing these in? For wizards and other decks that like to defense react or activate abilities, you're bringing all of these cards in when you are up against something that you want to pop phantasms for, and then you're bringing these cards in. One, maybe because they're just good enough to be main board, but also because you need more blues in the deck to pay for more effects. These are also great if you're trying to pay for like Frostbite effects or like Channel Lake Frigid effects. So that is the sideboard for the deck itself. All right, so I've simulated a turn here. I've shuffled up the deck. I've drawn 4 cards. I haven't looked at them yet, but we'll look at them together. I'm just going to throw out these 4 equipment, the Flamescale Furnace, Arcanite Skullcap, Silken Form, and Silent Stilettos. And this is basically what a turn could look like in any specific scenario. So looking together, we have Passing Mirage, Sweeping Blow, Invoke Yendrai, and oh, look at that, we got 2 Invoke Yendarais. Kind of interesting. So just glancing at this is a fine turn. If we're starting the game off, we can set up in some interesting ways here. Very basic. The first thing I'm seeing is like red Sweeping Blow, pitching an Invoke Yendrai, meaning that we can create, first of all, floating no resources, but in doing so, we're creating an Ash. So let me grab my Ash token. Creating an Ash here. And then the effect here from Sweeping Blow is also going to create an Ash as well. So this threatens a little bit of damage, and it creates 2 Ash. Now, we're not using the Ash right now, but what we can do, if we don't want Yendarai here, we could technically play a Yendarai, but if we don't want to play a Yendarai, we could pitch this and Flamescale Furnace, because we've played a red card. So at instant speed, gain 1 resource, or sorry, we'd first create an Ash because we're pitching a red card. So we go up to 3, and then we would look at the number of red cards that have been pitched, and we create 2 resources. So if we wanted to just do this to create more Ash, that is a fine thing to do. So now we have 3 Ash, and then we can end with Passing Mirage, which is a really cool effect to have on the board early. The other option, if we don't want to do that, is we can have this Invoke Yendarai, and we can actually play Invoke Yendarai, pitching the Passing Mirage, and in doing so, we have a dragon on the board, which is pretty solid. Having a dragon on the board that is a 3, it comes in with an endurance counter as well. This dragon basically could attack right away, and in doing so, threaten some extra damage, or we could just sit it right there and wait. From that point, we could tuck these to the bottom and draw 4 new cards. And just assuming we're going to block with some of like our cards in general, what are we looking at? We're looking at a blocking card, a life protecting card. We're looking at Rake the Embers, which is fantastic to play because it's going to generate or it's going to create the dragons out of this Ash. So from here, we could like Fate Foreseen and look. And then we see a Passing Mirage. Maybe we can tuck that for a later date. Now we have 2 Passing Mirages on the bottom of the deck to play for late game. And then we could even like Sigil of Solace to gain some life on this turn, basically just mitigating whatever damage they're dealing. And then with a hand like this, we could play like a yellow Rake the Embers, pitching a red, so we'd make 3, and then this would make 1 to 4. And then we would we'd turn 2 of them if we choose to. We could turn 2 of them into 2 Ash Wings. Now we haven't played a red card, but again, we're just generating and creating things, and then maybe pushing an Ash Wing. If they decide to pop it with something, like we're playing a hero that wants to pop, who cares? They pop it, who cares? It's not that big of a deal. We can just as easily be content having these Ashwings out on the board. We can't go wide with them. We don't really want to go wide with them. We keep drawing up cards and drawing up hands, choosing what to block with. Like here, we could choose to block with like all of these cards. We block for 6 with these 2 cards, a Sweeping Blow blue and a Billowing Mirage, so be it. Then we can Fate Foreseen something and Opt as well, so we can block a total of 10, seeing it dust up, leaving it on top. And then we have a 0-cost card, which is a DROMAI. We could choose to play said DROMAI and gain an action point, turning that Ash down. Playing DROMAI out does meet the requirement of playing a red card, and we can attack with DROMAI. When we attack with it, we gain an action point, and then we can attack. At that point, if you want to swing all of these dragons, you can. Or you can be content to sit as well and just keep playing this game where we protect a little bit of our life and we draw into more stuff. Having dragons, having attacks, things like this. So this is basically what the deck wants to do. It wants to protect life totals when it can. It wants to play like easy red cards, like maybe you chuck all of these cards at your opponent and block as much as you can. And then you play Uprising on this turn. And in doing so, you have 4 dragons. You attack with all of them, and they all attack for 1 extra. So for 4, 2, 2, and Yendurai comes for 4 as well. This is what the deck wants to do. This is what I've hopefully designed the deck to do. Feel free to take this list, mess around with it, try it out for yourself. If you enjoyed this video, if you learned something about the game of Flesh and Blood or about DROMAI herself, feel free to leave a like, leave a comment down below with what you would change. Make that number go to that other number, which would be pretty exciting because we're getting very close to the old 10K subscribers, which I am very much looking forward to. As always, thanks for watching.